Europe has emerged from the pandemic only to be confronted with war in Ukraine. All the while, Russia's ally China is driving its European expansion, making motorways, building bridges, and investing where others won't.
China was the only interested party for a huge port in the Mediterranean at the time.
As Beijing widens its gateway to this continent, there are warnings. It all comes at a cost.
This is the most visible case of human trafficking and labor exploitation we had in the country so far.
China denies it's exploiting workers and European governments. But who's really benefiting from this modern-day Silk Road?
We cannot be driven out by some investment without being asked about it.
How much should Europe gamble on China as it weighs up the risk and reward? It's an unmistakably Chinese scene. From the workers to the offices. Beijing is pouring money into this copper mine, hoping it's a golden gateway to further economic expansion. But this is not China, it's Serbia, on the edge of the EU, where the red of the Communist Party is leaving its mark.
The Chinese company treats us terribly. They do not respect us.
We tracked down this Vietnamese man who said he'd paid the equivalent of $1,600 to come to Serbia to help build a Chinese tire factory.
They forced us to work more, but they did not provide enough supplies. There are 20 or 30 workers living together in each container. They treat us like slaves.
After 5 months, he quit his job, but the father of 3 was stranded, far from his family.
There are around 400 Vietnamese people working here. The Chinese company kept saying to me, there is no flight back to Vietnam.
The latest we've heard is that he has now managed to return home, but only after taking out a $2,000 loan. This is the Linglong tire factory where he worked. We've seen employment contracts that appear to be copied and pasted from the Middle East. If you're caught stealing, your hand is chopped off. If you were to murder someone, you're beheaded. This in a country which is set to join the EU. The tire company didn't respond to our messages. Serbia's president has said the allegations of the mistreatment of workers here is part of a wider campaign against Chinese investment. And he said, does the country really want to scupper a $900 million deal for the sake of some Vietnamese workers?
This is the most visible case of labor exploitation we had in the country so far.
Human rights groups say it's a warning as Chinese business expands further into Europe.
If you're actually having Chinese companies coming to other countries and not having institutions who are strong enough to prevent human rights violations or labor standards violations or any other violations, you will have probably the race to the bottom with other companies, because other companies will start decreasing their standards and start actually finding a leeway not to follow the rules.
Undeterred by its critics, Serbia's government has struck up a firm friendship with China, a bond on clear display when the president visited Beijing earlier this year.
You can count on Serbia as a true friend. Doesn't matter what kind of pressure or different type of influences, nothing can change our friendship of steel.
Serbia's socialist past means you can find enduring ties to China. But what do people in the capital Belgrade think of Beijing investment in their country?
I think investments are good, whether they are from China or, I don't know, European Union, USA, so on.
I'm pro-EU, I suppose. I don't know. And of course, clean air and fresh water and everything that comes along with it. I'm not so happy about these things which have been going on with these Chinese companies.
From Serbia, not yet in the European Union, to a near neighbour that is a member. Greece is emerging from the shadows of the financial crisis more than a decade ago. Its economy among the fastest growing in the EU. The boom at the port of Piraeus near Athens is helping. 2/3 are now owned by a Chinese state company, COSCO. It's been building up its stake after international lenders forced Greece to sell this and other public assets. When you get this close, you can see just how huge these container ships are. And day in, day out, they're bringing tons of goods, which will then be dispatched to all corners of Europe. And this is a crucial gateway to the continent for China. But the expansion of this port is controversial. Anthi Yanulu has lived in Piraeus all her life. The lawyer is now suing the port over unchecked dredging of the seabed, toxic pollution and other environmental damage.
Everyone is against this work because it will not benefit Piraeus, it will benefit other people that do not live here.
You think this place could be destroyed effectively?
Completely.
Workers at the port have been on strike over safety concerns. Watch the containers on the right. A narrow escape. But last year, another worker, Dimitris Daglis, died in a separate crane accident.
His death was a result of the intensification of our work and the fact that there were not enough safety measures in place.
We went to meet Marcos Bekris, the chairman of the dockers trade union in the port.
Is this growth at Piraeus having the same benefits for COSCO and for the workers and the communities here? I don't think so. I think that in the system we are living in, the idea of win-win is an illusion. I don't think that, right now, the employer can win at the same time with the worker, when they are exploiting our strength so that we produce all this wealth.
The Chinese owners didn't respond to our questions about the various concerns at the port. So how does the Greek government respond to these concerns about the way the port at Piraeus has developed under Chinese ownership? Well, we've come here to the Foreign Ministry to find out. Yes, Minister. Good to see you. Greece's foreign minister says although a European buyer would have been preferable, the port will be a success for both Beijing and Athens.
The truth is that China took over Piraeus, and now Piraeus is one of the biggest ports in Europe, and if what they say is true, and I had no reason to doubt it, probably it will become number one or number two in the whole of Europe. So that's a huge improvement, and the investment is substantial. So having said that, on our economic relations, I think both parties benefit. China has an entry point for its products to the European Union, especially to the Balkans and to the Central and Eastern Europe, and we have a big commercial port up to date.
But have we now seen the high point for the two countries' economic relations?
They're not fading away, but I have to say there was not any more substantial Chinese investment in Greece. But we judge the investment on commercial grounds. I mean, if the Chinese want to invest, we're a free country and a free economy.
If you look at Greece's rich history, it's full of strategic alliances. Rarely was one country friend or foe. And there are those today who say that Greece and Europe in general needs to take a pragmatic, smart approach when it comes to China, and that simply turning your back on the world's second biggest economy doesn't make sense. We're leaving Greece and heading to a former Yugoslav country with a remarkable story. Venture north through the Balkans, and this is Montenegro, apparently on the path to EU membership. But it's China lending the cash for this, the country's first motorway, a complex project which European experts had claimed was not feasible. This is a surreal experience, a brand new motorway, but we've got it completely to ourselves. By now it should have been full of traffic, but it's 2.5 years late. No one else is using it. Well, apart from these guys. In the 6 years of construction so far, only 41 kilometres have been built. And what about the cost? 1 billion euros, which must be paid back to Beijing. Or China could seize other assets, including potentially the important port of Bar. We'll take a look. This is as far as Montenegro's flagship infrastructure project extends to today. For now, yes, it is a road to nowhere. And it's held up as a warning to the rest of Europe as China pursues its Belt and Road Initiative.
It's still a secret. We didn't see the main project design of.
Some say the motorway shows why Europe should take greater precautions to protect itself when dealing with China.
I would not say that Chinese investments are by default, dodgy. The key for the European, Union when it comes to the countries like Montenegro is to insist on a full application of the laws. That kind of insistment, that kind of supporting the country will make Montenegro or other countries more resistant to any kind of influence.
Montenegro's new government hopes the deal will not bankrupt the country, but those who've had to deal with the legacy of it also urge caution.
We need investments. If the China is the only one interested in investing in you, yeah, I say go for it, but just be careful about the terms of these investments, conditions of these investments, and making sure that everything is in line with your general policy.
From Montenegro to a fellow former Yugoslav country that has turned to the West. Croatia has been part of the European Union for the past decade, and the EU is paying for its biggest infrastructure project, the Pelješac Bridge. But it's Beijing built, down to the last bolt. The tender from the Chinese state-owned company was 20% cheaper than its nearest competitor. European rivals called foul, but couldn't stop the deal. Croatia and all other European countries face a delicate balancing act in dealing with Beijing. Concerns remain over alleged debt traps, cybersecurity, not to mention human rights. But there's a general reluctance to side exclusively with the United States and to reject all future Chinese investment and big infrastructure projects. And so as China's modern-day Silk Road expands in its many forms, individual European countries will need to weigh up risk and reward on a case-by-case basis.
So in Croatia, we don't have fears about Chinese influence.
This academic argues that if European governments are smart and selective, they can benefit from partnership with Beijing.
So if we exclude critical technologies, if we cooperate on physical things like, railways, infrastructure projects, I don't think that there is much problem in satisfying both the EU, NATO, US and China.
We asked 5 Chinese ambassadors in Europe for an interview about Beijing's vision for the continent, but none was available. China has declared a new global order with its ally Russia and failed to condemn the invasion of Ukraine. And so now, more than ever, European nations are reassessing the risk and reward of doing business with Beijing.